Welcome everybody to Strengths Convos with Jeff and Brent. We're going to talk about communication today, the talent of communication and how we turn that into a superpower. I am Jeff Venekamp. I'm the Director of Student Conduct, and my buddy as always is Brent. Say hi, Brent.
Hey.
All right, so first things first, I'm going to ask, because we're talking about communication, for everybody to turn on their cameras if possible. My woo and communication need affirmation and feedback. So obviously I understand if you're eating and don't want to share your screen. I get that. But otherwise, please do so. That helps me get feedback, which is a big part of woo and a big part of communication. So thank you for doing so. Those of you that are attending because of a core value experience, at the end, I will be putting a link in the chat, and in the chat you can, you'll be able to put your ID into it there. So I'll make sure you all get credit for that. So I know I invite everybody because of this strength, but to start us off by a show of hands or a raise your hand icon, how many have the talent of communication? Greta does. All right, Greta, it might be you to have to do a lot of talking today then to share this talent of yours.
I love talking.
Yeah, that's communication right there. We'll start by affirming what communication is. And so those of you that don't have it, you can see this in your friends. People with high communication like to describe things. They like to explain things. Public speaking and or writing is not intimidating to them for the most part. They get excited by doing so. They're also really gifted at bringing ideas to life. And that's kind of where I would like to spend our time talking today, is about how they take ideas and turn that into something shareable with everyone. Typically, people with high communication are gifted storytellers. Even boring things, they can figure out how to liven it up and make it exciting. Make it something that somebody wants to get engaged with. Greta, you might have to affirm this one. I didn't think of this for me, but you believe that most people have like short attention spans and they need to be engaged and keep engaged. Does that sound like you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I know that I have 3 seconds to gain somebody's attention.
Yeah, right? Like I gotta get it, and then I gotta keep it. They're great. People with communication are great at taking difficult concepts and figuring out a way to clearly communicate those. So they can take something that's really hard to understand and they can simplify it into something easily communicated. And then the last thing that I'll say in affirming this is that even though this is sitting soundly in influencing other people, most people with communication use their gift of communication to connect to other people. So it's how they get into relationship building. It's how they build connection to other people is through communication and storytelling. Brent, what can you add?
Yeah, all of the things, just reaffirming everything that Jeff said. I think an important thing for folks with communication as your great storytellers, great presenters, is like evaluating your audience, evaluating who you're presenting to and what's going to be the message that connects with them. It's something that you already do, but being able to hone that as a skill really takes this from a talent to a strength. And then I think it's just really important as you think about communication, if you're a collector of stories, like how can you tell that story in a more engaging way? Or if you're telling a specific story to a certain audience, what's going to engage them? I think it's important for you to recognize your audience in everything that you're doing. And then as you communicate and use that as a connection to others, like it's huge with relationship building. And oftentimes I think if you're working in a group or if you're working Professionally, like you probably have someone that's that sounding board that as you're communicating your thoughts and ideas, like can help filter through things or clarify things and help you better hone whatever message you're trying to create or present to others.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, Brent. It's a lot of what, as we move from the affirming of our strengths into how to develop it, which is really turning it into the powerful. We need to talk about how are you storing this information, these stories, where do you catalog them? Do you journal? Do you write a lot just to get your thoughts down on paper? George McGovern famously wrote stories and kept them on card catalogs, kept them on files like this size, and he would write a story about, today I presented at the Strengths Combo and we talked about communication. There were 17 people in the room, ... And he would have this story, and that's how he would share that. So figure out a system to keep your stories readily available. Like you said, Brent, when you're presenting, pay attention to audience reactions and how you're going to get reactions, because getting feedback is so important to effective communication. That's why at the beginning of this presentation, I said, if you can, turn on your cameras for me. I get energy off of feedback. I get energy off of eye contact. It doesn't have to be everything, but it's somebody who's looking at me. I notice that. When you talk about how to develop it, in an academic setting, it's what classes are you taking that are seminar in size, not necessarily large lecture where there isn't opportunity for feedback and for communication, but what classes can you take that are encouraging of your verbal feedback. Finding people to work with to help, it would be find people with ideation, find people with futuristic. These are people that have ideas, but they don't know how to put it down on paper. They don't know how to communicate necessarily. So for you to work with them to say, oh, I love that idea. Let me write it down into a form that seems to make sense. Really powerful. Sometimes silence, like I said, for me, silence is a little awkward. So if that starts to feel uncomfortable, look for people in the room that have high empathy, or to bring to the room that have high empathy, to let them help you read the room. Sometimes silence is necessary. Sometimes silence doesn't bother anybody else in the room, except for those of us with communication. So understanding the room is really important. And then also finding people with positivity and harmony, thinking about those people. They can help you develop your sensitivity to others and understanding how to read a room. So think of those strengths and working with those people. Specifically about academics, discussion-based classes. Discussion-based classes are really powerful for you. When you work in a study group, find other people who are willing to talk out concepts, not somebody who wants to sit quietly in our group and just read and study on our own, but find somebody who wants to talk about it. Okay, can we talk about this last chapter? Or can we talk about what's happening in biology right now? Because you need the verbal interaction to do that. Oftentimes rewriting things in your own words is helpful. So even if you're a studier who likes to just read things through, then finding an opportunity to rewrite that in your own words will help solidify it up here for you. Classmates, and this is a thing about like working in classes, you're the one person in the room who has this talent of communication. So your classmates are looking to you to engage the professors verbally. So when the professor says, hey, what do you think about this? Your classmates are looking at you going, well, Brent likes to talk, so let's let Brent do the talking for the class. That's your superpower at play. That's your talent coming forward. So don't shy away from it. You can ask for feedback. You can say, am I talking too much? Does other people want to participate? That's perfectly acceptable for you to be that person. But your classmates are probably looking for your feedback because they know you like to do it. So embrace this talent of yours, embrace it and use it. Work with professors who have office hours posted. I guarantee you professors want you to come to their office. Every professor I talk to says, I post my office hours, not a lot of students show up. They want you to come, especially if you have questions or you just want to talk about a concept that they had in class. It's okay, they're asking you to do that. And then when you're picking classes, find courses that give you credit for presenting and participating. So ask the professors before you register saying, what is this graded by? Do I get to do presentations in this class? Because people that get graded by presentation and communication, they love doing the presentations part. So embrace that. And then the last thing I'll say about academics before we dig into careers is it's okay to audition for a play, even if you're not a theater major. Because your gift of being out there and presenting is something that people would like to see. So feel comfortable auditioning for plays, even if you're not a theater major. Brent, you need to talk. I'm talking way too much, man.
No, that's all right. I think one of the challenges, and I think a helpful trick, depending on like your audience, especially with silence, I think it's okay to communicate about communication and say, I noticed we're being a little quiet, what's going on? And I think as you think about different strengths and different people that you're working with, some people might be more analytical and they're thinking through everything that you said. And I know myself, I have a lot of strategic thinking skills. So if Jeff gave this very long new idea or communicating something new to me, I might have my thinking face on, which isn't always like the most expressive. It's just me processing through it. So if it's silent in the room saying, I notice there's a silence, what's going on? What do I need to further clarify? I think that's helpful to people who just might need more processing time. And that gives them the floor to express, I'm just thinking through this. I'm trying to work through this and giving people time. I think depending on the strengths of people in the room, if you're proposing a new idea, whether that's in a career or whether that's in like a study group or a student organization that you're involved in, some people want a preview of like what's going to happen. So even if you're communicating that story, that message that you're doing in person, or as we're working in our world right now via Zoom, I think it's okay to give some previews, especially for those people who have those high thinking skills. They want a little bit more time to dig deep into that. So again, that's just kind of a message about knowing your audience. And we're lucky here at Augie that we're a strengths-based campus, and you can know all of those things about really any room that you're walking into as long as folks have taken the top 5. So that can be a helpful tool if you're going into a new audience, or if you're just wanting to find that out about the student organization that you're in and the group of people that you work with. That can be a helpful asset to communicate well.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Well done. The other pieces of advice that I'll give you, actually, I'm going to take a minute. Greta, I'm going to ask a question because I need to know, you find that your communication strength is what we're talking about with like a verbal communication, like storytelling, or do you find it more in the written format?
I think it's a good balance of both, if that makes sense. Again, you talked a lot about reading your audience. You kind of got to play to that audience. And sometimes it's in storytelling, sometimes it's in written form.
Yeah. And I asked that, and it was leading very intentionally. I worked with somebody very closely who had high communication, and his straight up came in written form. He wasn't great in front of people, didn't like that kind of spotlight, but he wrote and wrote and wrote. My recommendation is to find an editor, because you think everything you're writing is so important, because it is to you. You're the storyteller, you're putting it in written form, but you need an editor that says, wait, we're sending an email. This does not need to be 10 pages long. We need to figure out how to condense this down to something somebody's going to read, because if you're like me, if an email is more than 2 paragraphs long, I'm probably moving on. So find yourself a good editor that you trust that says, hey, how can we communicate this better? And then that leads into the next phase of our conversation, which is about how do you hone this talent, which is classes in communication, classes in speech writing, classes in writing, literature courses, which are about stories, and then working with clubs and organizations that bring in speakers, bring in lecturers, because you learn from observing so much. Because at 18 to 20 years old, you need to learn the skill of communication. You need to learn how to make a great presentation. And there are organizations and speakers that do this professionally. Either a Toastmasters club that is easy to join. I know there's one in Sioux Falls that's really engaged. They want you to show up and tell a story. They want you to come and try out a presentation. So showing up to give them kind of a preview of what you're working on, because they'll help you hone this skill. And then volunteering for groups like a UBG or any of the other clubs on campus that bring in lecturers, bring in speakers, because you get to host them. You get to meet them personally. And then you can talk about how long did it take you to craft this presentation? Because, and I've worked with hundreds of speakers throughout my career, I can tell you each of them have taken a long time to come up with one presentation that is really good, that they do over and over and over and over again. It looks like they're doing it for the first time because they're that good at doing it, but they've been working on the one presentation for a long time. When working in finding out a career or something like that, campaign spokespersons for an organization, being a spokesperson for an organization might be something to really explore. And if that's not your cup of tea, make sure you take time to interview somebody who's doing the job you want to do, or the job that you're thinking you might want to do. I don't know of many people that would turn you down, can I talk to you for 20 minutes about your career, if you were like exploring it. I guarantee you, if an 18-year-old or 19-year-old called me up and said, hey, Jeff, can I talk about your job right now? I want to know if it's something that I want to get into. Everybody would take you up on that. Because you want to interview those people that are in that field, because you want to find out if that feeds your communication talent. Because social interaction is so important to you, your work environment is tantamount to your success at work. And that is a key. As I was writing this, Greta and I spoke yesterday about her coming to this, and I'm thinking, Greta works kind of in like an environment that I don't know if that's feeding her communication right now, because it's in her own little office. It's not a, like our suite here in our world, there's like 7 people, and people are in and out all day long, and we're always throwing ideas off of each other. And I'm thinking about Greta going, she's working down there in her own little office world by herself. And so, Greta, are you happy working there? Do you want to move up to our suite?
I would love that, but honestly, I have the creative team here, so I've got one of our designers, and so we talk every day.
Yeah.
And so I am getting my bucket filled. It was hard this spring when we were all apart. I will be completely honest. It was tough for those who are verbal and who like team building, and so I'm glad to be back on campus.
Yeah. I can say the same thing from somebody with high communication and woo. Being isolated is really rough. Being alone, I need the feedback of people. I need the energy of people. Brent, what do you got to say?
I think just with having really high communication, another thing that you can do is like with folks with that as a lesser thing, you can help them better communicate their ideas. And I think as you hone your skills, like you're great at communication, the listening skills that you also employ will help you tell a better story for your team, for an organization you work for like whether that's a student organization, for a group that you're presenting with in a class. So you're great at communicating. You can put your thoughts into stories, but be sure that you're incorporating the thoughts of those around you. And I think that's something communicators naturally do, but I think it's also something to be aware of if you're over communicating or if you're taking 50% of the communication in a meeting, that might be appropriate sometimes. It might not be appropriate sometimes. So just being aware of that. You're natural readers of the room, so you'll probably pick up on that very quickly. But it's just something to keep in mind as you hone your communication skills.
Yeah. You got to leave air in the room, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So any questions from people before we go around and get a one-sentence takeaway?
This is less of a question, but I really, really liked Brent's comment on it's okay to communicate about communication. I think that's really understated because I cannot count the number of times it's been way easier to communicate after you open that like window in a sense where it's like you're talking about, hey, I noticed you're not talking today, or hey, maybe you can talk to each other, the type of thing. This is more from experience, but I don't know if you've heard of Dungeons and Dragons. I volunteer and help a group of middle schoolers in Parker, and there's a couple really quiet kids in there, and I think communicating about communicating is something I learned about through that. And it's like once I figured that out, it became a lot easier for the other kids to get to know each other, and it's like that group's going like a year and a half strong, so
That's awesome.
pretty great.
That takes us back to actually strengths programming in general and strengths development in general, which is it is important for you to share your gifts with others. It's the only way that strengths really works on our campus is if you walk up and say, that's my relator kicking into gear, or that's my woo, or that's my empathy, or whatever talent it is. Sharing that with other people opens the conversation, and strengths is about giving us all a same dialogue, a same language to use that says, I'm really good at this. I want to be able to share it with the group more often, whether it's communication or analytical or discipline, whatever one it is. That's the importance of strengths on our campus, is to share that with others. So communication is to say, I'm okay being the talker in the room. I'm the person doing the presentation for our group presentation. As long as y'all chip in and do the other things, I'm happy being the spokesman or spokesperson for this project. Well done. Thank you, Gabe. All right. So as I do every time, real quickly, I'm going to go around. One takeaway from today. All right. Jacob Ludwig, what's one takeaway?
Just like what you said, strengths, it's really important on this campus for everyone, to give everyone like a voice and their input and everything.
Excellent. Thank you, Jacob. Prince. All right. I'll come back to you, Prince. Jordan.
I like how when you talked about communicators talking with futuristics, like I'm a futuristic, so I understood that point of view and like how we work and how our minds work, and yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Jordan. Carrie?
I would say The part where you're like talking about reading other people and like if they're not communicating and like communicating with them about that to like, I don't know, like better understand like where they're coming from.
Excellent. Thank you, Kira. Kira? Oh, Kira just sent me a private thing. Her mic isn't working. So it was just really insightful for her to hear how communicators work and how she can work on her communication skills. Gracie.
I think it was just nice to hear different ways we can be able to communicate because I've never been like good at it. So just hearing tips and stuff is it was good.
That's awesome. When you get back to campus, walk up and down your floors and find those that have communication high and then start leaning on them a little bit. Josie?
I think it's kind of interesting because communication is like one of the skills that you can really use to like interact with others, where some of the skills are like more for yourself, like internally. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, thank you. Tessa?
I just thought that like it was important when you said that you have to make sure that you're not over communicating.
Yeah. Sydney?
I thought that strengths in communicating at Augie is like an important tool to have. That's what I got from this.
Good, thanks. Mary?
Along with what Tessa said, I think just like listening and like active listening is an important part in communication.
Yeah, active listening is certain. And that what I love about what you just said is active listening is absolutely a skill that you can learn and practice. Good job. Eva?
I liked when we were talking about like connecting communication and like being a relator to someone because I'm very much a relator. So I think being able to like tie communication into being a relator was super important.
Cool, cool. Ellen?
I liked the idea that as a communicator, you can find other people who can help strengthen your own communication skills. And in a way, you can also help them as well with your own communication abilities to help strengthen themselves.
Thank you, Ellen. Braden?
One takeaway I had was when you were talking about signing up for classes and like asking the professors, like, how is this graded? Like, is there presentations? Is there speeches? Like, am I going to be able to communicate a lot like in that class? And so,
yeah. So important to understand what the style of the teacher is when you're signing up for courses, to know if they're going to feed your strength, feed your talents, or align with your talents. Gabe, you already gave in. Prince took off. So Alexis, do you have a takeaway for us? She turned her mic off or her camera off. She might have had somebody come into the office. Greta, do you have a takeaway?
I do. I have a couple. Listening is being a leader. I think that that's good to remember, and that don't apologize for having communication as your superpower.
Right. Thank you. Do not apologize. This is your power, your gift to us. Make sure you're using it. Brent, what can you say?
Yeah, I think everyone summed it up really well. I think noticing what you're good at in communication and just figuring out how you can better hone it, whether that's a written medium, whether that's public speaking. I think understanding the stories and the messages that you're telling, and then just figuring out the best way to communicate that message, and just always being aware of the audience that you're communicating to.
Yeah. Thanks, Brent. Housekeeping for everybody. I posted in the group chat the link so that you can put your ID number into a spreadsheet for us so that we can give you credit for attending. My last thing about communication that I'll say is that honing this talent and sharing this talent is so important, because right now we need stories, we need great storytellers, we need people who can communicate better. And this is a gift that you have that you can share with other people and help them get better at it. So please do so. Please share this gift with others. This is right in the middle. This is number 17 nationally out of 34. So half the people have this and half the people don't. So make sure you're sharing this and sharing this gift with those. All right. If you got any other questions, stay and ask. If not, take care of each other, and we'll see ya.
Thank you.
You're welcome.